Hello Internet and welcome to a new tutorial. If you make Psytrance, you've probably run into the problem of arranging your leads in a Q&A sequence that actually tells a story. Because in Psytrance, we use a lot of single-note arpeggios to tell our stories instead of melodies like in other genres, and the structures are always evolving. So in this tutorial, we're diving into the weird art of creating groovy Psytrance sequences. Or to be more precise, I'm going to show you how to create basslines, FM leads, and as a bonus, I'll teach you how to trick your gear to create melodies for you, like so you don't need a degree in music theory. I'll be using ARP by Midicake because it lets me create and perform those ideas really fast, but you can follow along in the DAW or using your favorite sequencers. Those techniques doesn't know a specific gear, they are universal. Before we dive to sequencing, what is ARP by Midicake? It's a 4-tracks arpeggiator / sequencer that can control up to 4 instruments. Think of it as a MIDI brain that you're going to use as a jam / happy accident station to come up with draft ideas for your arrangement, get inspired, and if you're brave enough, go DAW-less and jam the whole track idea using it. Since the bassline is the foundation of any Psytrance track, we are going to start with it. So what makes a bassline groovy? The answer to that is really simple. It's a mix of tonal and dynamic movement. Basically, we're going to introduce small melodies and changes in volume. To do that on the Midicake ARP, we're going to start by choosing one of the arpeggiators. Let's go with ARP number 1. We're going to choose our root note. In here, I chose the note of F, but you can go with whatever you like because you have the keyboard in here. So basically, you can go with E, D sharp, F sharp. I'll stick with F, just like so. And to choose your scale, you have 8 presets in here. I'll take this one because it's the harmonic minor one. But if you want to change it, all you have to do is click on the button and choose. Here it's harmonic minor, but you can change it with the encoder just like so. That out of the way, let's go to the settings and start with the velocity first, because the patch I am playing actually reacts to velocity and changes its volume when the velocity changes. Let's set the velocity to maximum as a starting point just to have full volume. So now we have this. Okay, we can barely hear anything because the octave is too low. So let's go to the octave in here, set it to maybe first octave. Now we have this. Perfect. Now let's change the timing to 1/16, so we will get basically a Gatling gun kind of feeling. To create the triplet bassline we love in Psytrance, we'll go to rhythm. Now, the rhythm pattern is actually a velocity pattern. And what's really interesting with it is that if we set any of the steps to 0 velocity, ARP is going to skip playing it. Check this out. Perfect. Now that's our triplet bassline. Now to give it the first layer of groove, we're going to give it this dynamic movement. And I'm going to do so by changing the velocity of the notes. So the first note is going to play with the tail of the kick. So I want it to blend with the kick. So I'll give it low volume, something like that. The second note is my main bassline note. So I'm going to keep it to full velocity. And the third one, just to give it some contrast and movement, I'll set it to a tiny bit lower in volume than the second note, than the main one. So now we have this. Check this out. And with the kick, we'll get this. Check this out. Now, up to the second layer of the groove, and that is the small melodies. Now, to do so, we're going to go to the bounce parameter in here. And bounce basically controls how ARP is going to play the notes. First of all, our sequencer now is set to only 1 step. Let's set it to 16 steps. Go back to bounce. Now, if I'm going to play it, you will hear it's an ARP going up, just like so. Now, I want to create a custom bounce pattern, or basically in this case, it's going to become a sequencer. So I'll just hit on program, just like so, and I'm going to take one empty custom pattern, let's say 11, just like so. And now check this out. If I'll go to edit mode and change those steps, I'm going to create a melody. Listen to this. Right? Now, to make it easier for me, the first note of these steps, I'm going to set it to maximum value. So I'll just know where I am in the sequence, just to make my life easier. Now, to create the melody of my bass line, I like to follow a really simple method. It's some sort of a cheat sheet I've been using for couple of years now, and it never fails me. It goes like this: one beat on, one beat off. One beat, there will be nothing going on, just a plain triplet bass line. And the second beat, there will be some melody movement. Then the third beat, nothing going on. The fourth beat, there will be some melody movement. Check this out. So first beat, nothing going on. Second beat, I'll move only one note up. Third beat, nothing going on. Fourth beat, a little melody, and for that, the second note, I'll move it up, and the third note, or the last one, I'll move it 2 notes up, just like so. But this is only a 1-bar sequence, and if you're going to play it over a 7-minute structure, things are going to get really boring. So let's add another sequence. So we will have 2-bar sequence, and later on I'll show you how to switch between those sequences. So for that, let's go to custom number 12. I'm going to use the same principle of the first note up, just to know where I am in the sequence. Now, for the second bar, what I like to do is something a little bit different. Instead of going 1 beat on, 1 beat off, I'll go 2 beat off, 2 beat on. So these first 2 beats, I won't touch them. And for the second 2 beat, the first one, I'm going to do 1 note up for the middle one, for the main bass note. And the second beat, I'll move the second note 2 notes up, and the third note 1 note up. Basically the opposite as the first bar. And now what I'll do, I'll manually move between these 2 bars so you will hear the full sequence. Check this out. Now, to modulate the movement between these 2 patterns using ARP, there are a couple of routes that we can take. The first one is using the follow action. So what we will do is basically copy this first arpeggio to the second one. On the second arpeggio, we'll play the second sequence, and on the first arpeggio, we will play the first sequence. And then what we will do is unmute the second arpeggio, set it to follow the first arpeggio, and now when we will play them, ARP will first play the first arpeggio, then it will move to the second one. Check this out. Now, the second route that we can take, and it's actually my favorite because it's happy accidents territory, is by using the FX module to modulate the pattern that we're playing. Check this out. I'll mute the second arpeggio. I'll choose the first one. Now, let's go to the FX in here, and I'm going to set it to modulate the bounce parameter, just like so. I'll set an FX seed, let's say this one, 86. And now, I'll set it to modulate maybe 30%. But now it's constantly modulating, so it's constantly changing the pattern. I don't want that. I wanted to let the first pattern to play for 1 bar, and then it's going to change it. So for that, we'll go to the pre-modern here. We'll set it to 1 bar, so it's going to leave the first pattern playing for 1 bar, and then it's going to play for 1 bar, and then it's going to repeat the cycle. And now we have this. Check this out. But see, now it's moving between the 2 patterns that I've just created. How about we set the FXC to something different and set the amount to something different, like so, and now we will get a result that I really don't know what it's going to be. Check this out. See, it played another pattern. Let's set the FX amount to 100%, or maybe 140. Played another pattern. We can now change the C to maybe this one, and now we have this. And this is what's really interesting, because with this FX module, you can come up with ideas and happy accidents that you've never thought of. Now that the bassline is out of the way, let's create a groovy FM lead. Now, groovy leads are a different scenario than basslines in Psytrance because we heavily use single note arpeggios. And in this case, the groove actually comes from step variations, meaning some steps will play, other won't, and some steps are longer in time than others. Now, to do so on the Midicake ARP, let's take one of the arpeggios. I'm going to go with the third one. Let's set its MIDI out to channel number 2 because I don't want my bassline and FM lead to be on the same MIDI channel because they're going to play the same notes and yeah, it's not going to work out, right? So that out of the way, because it's a single note arpeggio, let's go to steps in here, set it to 1 step, so that's out of the way. Let's go to the timing in here, set it to 1/16. Let's hear what we have. Nothing because it's muted. Let's unmute it. Now we have this. Okay, we need to take it down a couple of octaves, so let's go to the octaves in here, set it to 0. Not enough, -1. Perfect, that's the timbre I'm looking for. But in the case of this particular FM patch, the velocity is modulating the filter's cutoff. So what we're going to do, just like with the bassline, we're going to go to the rhythm, which is our velocity pattern in here. And because by default it's on pattern number 1, which I used for the bassline, we need to change that. So let's go to... yeah, maybe this pattern. This pattern looks really interesting. Let's go to the length in here. Let's set it to 16, so maximum. And now we have this. Check this out. And now what I'm going to do is randomly change the velocity values of these steps. And while doing so, I'll make sure that some of the steps won't play, maybe this one, and some of the steps will be joint or basically be a longer note. So something like this. Perfect. Now the gate length is clearly way too long. Let's change that. Let's go to gate in here, set it to maybe 2 ticks, 3 ticks. We're going to modulate that later on, so let's keep it on 4 ticks for now. Let's go back to the rhythm pattern, keep on refining until we have something we like. Perfect. Now we have a nice pattern going on, but it kind of feels that the pattern is repeating itself. So what I'm going to do to change it and make it seems that it's random, I'm going to go to the first modulator in here, right? I'm going to set it to the rhythm pattern length. Rhythm length, right? I'm going to set the shape in here to a triangle. By the way, if you're looking for sample and hold, there's no sample and hold on this machine. There's literally no random. Actually, the slogan of Midicake is no such thing as random. So if you're going to create anything random with it, you're going to actually fake it, right? So to fake randomness, in the case of changing the rhythm's pattern length, I'm going to set the rate in here to something of maybe 1.5 bar, right? And now I'm going to give it some modulation amount, maybe 50%. And now we have this. Check this out. See, basically we've just created some sort of a polyrhythm, and this is what is creating the illusion of randomness. Now, as I mentioned, the groove in the case of these single note arpeggios come from step variation. Some steps are playing, others not, so we just took care of that. And now we're going to take care of the length of these notes. And for that, we'll take the second modulator, and we're going to set it to modulate the gate, right? I'll give it another triangle shape. Let's go with this one. So it's a different one from the modulation A. We'll just go in different direction. I'm going to set the rate in here to maybe 2/3 and make it modulate the gate just a tiny bit, maybe 13%. Now we have this. Check this out. Can you hear the groove we've just created? And since this particular patch, as I mentioned, there's velocity modulation on the filter cutoff, I'll go to the FX page in here. I'll modulate the velocity with one of the FX seeds. Let's take this one. Give it some modulation, maybe 60%. And of course, the FX repeat or the speed of it will be something like maybe 2/3, or you know what? Let's go with 3 bars. Let's go with that. Let's play. Really interesting. And now with some kick and bass, we'll get this. Check this out. Okay, maybe I'm modulating the gate way too much, so let's go back to the mod being here, set it to maybe 8%, and now we have this. Check this out. Now that we have a groovy bassline and a groovy FM lead, it's time for the big question: how to trick our gear to create melodies for us, or how to create melodies on the Midicake ARP. Now, this is where things get really, really interesting, and from now on, it's happy accidents land. Let me show you what I mean. Let's turn off both ARP1 and ARP3, take ARP number 4. Of course, Midicake ARP is going to keep things to our root note and our scale, so F harmonic minor. Let's unmute it. And now let's go to the settings. Make sure that we're playing a different MIDI channel than ARP1 and ARP3. And if you have ARP2, of course, ARP2. So MIDI channel out 3 for me. Now we have this. Listen to it. Okay, let's take the octaves in here, pull it down, maybe 1 or 2 octaves. Perfect. Now, in the case of this patch, there's also velocity modulation, but this time on the timbre. So I'm going to go to velocity in here and set it to maybe 2% or 3%. So we have this. Yeah, just a sine wave. Now, the rhythm, just like with the FM lead, it's the first rhythm pattern, so it's the same for the bass line. Let's change it. Let's go with maybe this one. Let's hear it out. We already have something interesting going on, but it's a 4 steps sequence. Let's change it. Steps 16. The harmonic minor is so good. I really love the scale, but as you can hear, it's an ARP up kind of sequence. We're going to change that with the bounce, but before that, it's going up way too high. I want to limit the number of steps. So for that, let's go to notes in here. Let's go to note limit. Let's set it to 12 semitones. So only 1 octave. Now we have this. And we already have something really interesting going on with the sequence because we've limited the number of notes where the ARP can go, right? Now, let's go back to bounce in here and change the bounce pattern, maybe to this one. Let's hear it out. Already have something really interesting going on. Change to this one. Maybe this one. Oh, this is really nice. But let's keep it to the skip one. I really, really love it. Right? And now, what I want to do to make things really interesting, I'll go to the jump parameter in here, right? And the jump parameter, what it'll do, it'll just skip notes. So instead of going from, let's say, C to C sharp, it's going to skip the C sharp and move to D right away, right? So let's set it to 2. We have a really nice sequence going on, right? Let's go to the repeat parameter in here. We didn't see it. And with repeat, we can repeat the notes, of course, but I don't want to do that. I want to add some chopping. Check this out. Let's set repeat to 1. Let's go to chop in here. I want to add some chopping. So it's basically just chop the notes. So we have this. Check this out. Right? But I don't want it to chop every note. I want it to chop only the 8th notes. And for that, we can edit the chopping, right? Set the pattern to maximum 8, and only the last one is going to be chopped. So now we have this. Check this out. We can barely hear it because the gate is too long. So let's go to gate in here, set it to maybe 6. Maybe 8. Just like what I did with the Groovy FM lead, I'll go to the rhythm in here and I'm going to set it to 16th. Oh no, this is the editing. I'm going to set it to the length to 16, so full, and I'm going to change the velocity of some of these notes. So some of them will play, others won't. Check this out. Let's do so, editing mode. Now we have this. Now, let's modulate the rhythm's pattern length exactly like we did with the Groovy Bassline. So modulation number 1, let's set it to rhythm length, give it some modulation. I'm going to keep this one synced to 1 bar. Now we have this. It's really, really interesting. Now let's go to FXs in here, modulate the velocity with whatever FX seed. Make sure it's velocity. Let's make it repeat every 2 bars. Give it a tiny bit of modulation. I don't want a lot of modulation because what will happen now is that because the velocity is set to only 2, when this FX pattern, look at it, it'll go, this is positive modulation, this is negative modulation. When it'll go to the negative modulation, it's going to stop playing. And I don't want a lot of cuts in the pattern, right? So now we have this. Maybe set the amount to 30 because it's modulating the timbre way too high. Perfect. And now with the rest of our sequence, so with the FM pattern and the bassline pattern, with some kick and bass, we will get this. Check this out. If you want to dive deeper into Psytrance production and sound design, check out my preset packs and masterclasses, links down in the description. And if you want to support the channel, don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. Things like that helps the channel a lot. Now that said, let's continue our tutorial. Now that we've covered the principles of creating groovy sequences, how about we put that knowledge in context and create a proper groovy Q&A sequence that we're going to use as a base idea for a track. And to do so, we're going to use one of my favorite features of the Midicake ARP, and that is muting and unmuting those arpeggios. Because essentially, the minimum requirement to create a sequence, especially in a nighttime Psytrance kind of context, is having 3 leads. 2 act as the main one, holding the main conversation, and the third one adding contrast. And with the Midicake ARP, we can create that sequence by muting and unmuting those arpeggios. It's an old school technique, but it creates organic sequences because you're not looking at the screen and muting and unmuting those sequences. You're just feeling the music and switching from one sequence to the other. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, check this out. First of all, the first ARP is controlling an FM lead, sounds like this. Right? The second one is another kind of FM lead, but there's a twist to it. Check this out. Right? But this FM lead has actually this macro controlling infiltrator. Essentially what's doing, it's sending a CC message that is controlling the mix knob of infiltrator to add some glitches. Check this out. I'll set it to maximum. Now we have this. And this is another layer of playability that the Midicake ARP has, these 4 macros, because you can set them to control any aspect of the device, or you can set them to send CC messages to control external gear. And the 4th arpeggio, the contrast one, sounds like this. Right? And now with some kick and bass, I'm going to create a sequence by muting and unmuting those arpeggios. Check this out. And with this is the end of this tutorial. I really hope you've liked it. I really hope you've learned something new. If you want to support the channel, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. This helps me a lot. And I'll see you in the next one.